We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, ViewRail.
America's leading manufacturer of floating stairs and modern cable glass railings.
They handle every part of the process, from design, engineering, manufacturing, delivery, all the way to installation.
There is a 10-year structural and finish warranty on all products installed by ViewRail certified technician.
Nearly all components are made in-house, giving you more control over style, material, finishes, budget, and timeline.
All products are designed as a modular integrated system that are engineered for easy installation. It's like putting together an erector set.
Thanks so much again, ViewRail, for sponsoring this episode. Welcome back to the Passion for Craft podcast. Today we have Alex Ellison with us. I get the name right?
Yeah, you did. You got it.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
And she, with Betsy Willis, has written a book called The Working Genius.
Your Hidden Genius.
Hidden Genius.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And what's the book about? Fill us in.
Yeah.
We're excited to have her on the podcast. She interviewed me a long time ago for this book, but I think this is appropriate for you guys out there trying to find your way in the trades and trying to find your way is just in life, right? And just what you're good at, what you're not good at. And so hopefully today's episode will be a resource for you to kind of, am I in the right place? And so, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Our hope with this book is, we interviewed people like you. We interviewed dozens and dozens of people from all walks of life to figure out, how do you use your talents at work? And also, when have you not used your talents at work? And tell us about how miserable that was. And so other people can avoid doing that.
Yeah.
And so the book comes with a code to an assessment called the U-Science assessment, which my co-author helped develop. So you take this assessment and you get this incredible insight into these hidden abilities that you have that a lot of people had no clue they had.
Really cool.
So, and I can tell you all about your dad's scores.
Why don't we just walk through me as an example
before
so that people know what they're getting into.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's level set here.
Yeah. Well, before we jump into all that, would just love to know how this idea came about for this book.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
How did you guys even decide this needs to be written right now?
Yeah. So Betsy had just co-founded this assessment, U-Science. It's not new technology. If you're familiar with Johnson O'Connor, it's an assessment that takes a couple days. You've got to pay like $1,000 to go to a center to do this. So it was pretty cost prohibitive to most people. So U-Science put this assessment online, basically democratized it. And a lot of high school students started using this initially as a career assessment tool. So that's my wheelhouse. So I do career and education counseling. So back in 2013, 14, I discovered the assessment and I was like, this is a game changer. So I want everyone I work with to take this because we need to have an objective starting point. So then Betsy and I connected over that sort of shared passion. And in 2020, this was a COVID antsy project. Everyone wanted to do something different, I think. And I think on the heels of COVID too, so many people were talking to us about, just being exhausted at work, rethinking their work, wanting to change things up a little bit. Yeah. And I think that really all of those things together created a perfect storm.
Alex, where did you work before getting into this? Like you had everyone at your workplace take this assessment. Where was that? Yeah.
So I have a counseling practice. And so my team is sort of all over the place and I have everyone take the assessment and it's really fascinating. I mean, self-awareness is great, but more interesting than that, I think, is empathy to understand how other people operate and work, whether it's your team or your partner or your friends or the person you're writing a book with. Betsy and I had kind of complementary aptitudes that worked together writing this book even. So I've had this counseling, my counseling practice doing career and education counseling since 2013. And then have been working on the book for the last almost 5 years.
So what age group are you typically working with?
Like 15 to 25.
Okay.
I think I took the Johnson O'Connor test.
Okay. Yeah. Where did you go?
I was somewhere in Dallas.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I took one when I was in high school. I think I told you they wanted me to be a farmer or a lawyer.
Right. No.
And you really...
and so I really dug into that and pardon the pun.
But there's like dexterity training in that too, like you gotta move beads across a board or something.
Right. Yeah. So it's much more tactile with Johnson O'Connor, but when you do it online, we obviously all these exercises are digitized. So when you go to take the U-Science assessment, I mean there are like 52 aptitudes we could assess, everything from like glare factor to finger dexterity and all these things. But we kind of looked at just the most essential aptitudes that are really most common in the majority of careers. So we're looking at things like your spatial reasoning, your numerical reasoning, your rate of idea generation, how comfortable you are making decisions under pressure when you don't have all the facts in front of you. So these things that like school certainly is not going to tell you have, and school's not going to celebrate. And so we talk to a lot of people actually, and in my work, a lot of young people who think, I'm bad at school, I stink at math. And then we give them an assessment. It's like, actually, you're great at numerical reasoning. And you have this, maybe a spatial ability that's never been recognized. So it's a huge celebration for a lot of people.
That's exciting.
This is maybe a personal battle that I need to fight elsewhere, but I am curious. Is anyone truly able to be bad at math?
It's a great question. So it turns out, no, that's just too broad of a statement. There's so many different kinds of numerical reasoning, and there's numerical computation and numerical reasoning, two different things.
Wow.
So some people are really fast at adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. But when it comes to like doing, kind of more complex applied numerical analysis, that's a struggle. And some people, it's the exact opposite.
No way.
Yeah. We talked to a data scientist in the book who's incredibly, analytical in his numerical reasoning. But he's like, I grab a calculator when I calculate the tip at a restaurant, And so you can celebrate sort of whatever your mathematical abilities are, but there's no such thing as just like I'm bad at math across the board.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe encouraging to someone out there.
See, there you go. I know. A lot of people, and in fact, this is where there's some gender bias in this too. A lot of young women I work with will sort of self-assess as being bad at math, bad at science. And you give them an objective assessment, and the exact opposite is true.
Right.
So it really opens doors and opportunities.
Yeah, especially the STEM fields where it's heavily male-oriented and things like that.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very cool. You got a big publishing house to publish your book. As a writer and author, how did you do that? Tell me about that real quick.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. HarperCollins, Harvest, which is an imprint of HarperCollins, grabbed it, and we were over the moon. I mean, we're really so thrilled. We had an incredible agent, Eve McSweeney, who really worked with us for, just through the thick of it. It was a long process, and a lot of people helped us really put it together. It's going on 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
It's not easy.
It's like getting a PhD.
So some hard work is finally paying off in January.
Yes.
So just to be clear to all our patrons out there, like January 21st.
Yeah.
Go buy the book.
I know.
It's out there.
Exactly.
Get your assessment done.
You can pre-order it now and grab it early. So
really cool.
Yeah.
Well, really exciting. Do you want to walk through some findings in the book? Would it be helpful to have him as an example and walk through that?
Well, what I think is so cool about Brent's story is that, one of the things that struck me when we talked a couple years ago is that you started out as a teacher, right? And what we learned about you in your assessment is that you scored as a specialist. So you're someone who wants to have a craft, who wants to be a master craftsperson. I mean, literally in every way. And so really being able to drill deep and find this niche and really be this expert and in historic renovation and preservation, that was such a great example of the specialist. What we also found out is that you have a work approach of a sort of liaison. So you really like to share. And you share, I think, by teaching now, and I think we talked about that on the call, that you didn't have to choose between teaching and doing this work. You kind of get to do both.
Yeah.
So I think that was a really great example. You also are very numerical. You have a quantitative brain, and you're an idea person. And I actually wanted to ask the family.
Yeah, please.
How do you all support Brent in picking an idea? Because you're someone who comes up with a lot of ideas. You're you're a brainstormer. You scored as a high rapid idea rate person. Do you have people who help you hone in and pick ideas?
Well,
the
you're
best
talking
ones?
right now to a room of creatives, right?
They're all idea people.
Yeah. So for this particular podcast, I think it's really, everybody kind of throws in ideas. And at one point, I remember getting tired of coming up with ideas. I said, "You guys are going to have to come up with it." And then they came up with some great stuff.
Yeah.
Austin and Kristen have been filming for me for a long time, and Austin and I really work together well now, because he'll go, remember to say this, and what would be interesting if you did this. And so, because I'll get caught up in talking and teaching and forget the big picture of why am I even here? What am I doing? And he does a great job of saying, oh, remember to say this and be sure to incorporate this. So great teammates here.
That's the team thing is, the idea rate one was interesting with me and Betsy. I am what's called a concentrated focuser. So I actually don't have a crazy accelerated rate of idea generation. I sort of am the kind of person I bought the first wedding dress I tried on, bought the first house I looked at. I'm sort of I go with it. I'm an implementer and I'm an executor, but I kind of focus on one idea at a time. Betsy's the opposite. Betsy's all about like, have we thought of this? Could we try it this way? What if we tweaked it and did it this way? And so it can be frustrating, but when you're writing a book, that back and forth and that push and pull proved to be super helpful. So she would come up with a lot of ideas and I'd say, well, let's just try this one first and see where it lands. And if it falls flat, then let's go back to the drawing board.
Yeah. Well, something just to answer your question, I think he comes up with a lot of ideas, but especially like when dealing with a client and whenever he's like sitting down and having these conversations with how they're going to build a home, I think historic precedent is kind of the thing that keeps him within the boundaries.
Definitely.
So the client will say, I want to do this. And he'll go, okay, I love that. Here's a bunch of examples of that. So that is kind of like some guardrails that are naturally implemented. But then I think you still kind of take your own play on certain things and go, we're kind of being playful here. We're kind of doing this idea, but we're ultimately trying to stay true to, like, we're not going to put a gambrel roof on what should be a mansard roof. We're not going to, we're not going to do something that would be historically inaccurate just because I had that idea, but we're going to, I think that
that's a great point. The historical like accuracy and sort of honoring that is those are your guardrails.
I think so.
Interesting.
So if you like, I'm thinking of our listeners out there, and the example I always think of is this guy that used to work for us, trim carpenter, who we may have talked about this, but he was good at his craft, but he didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go, didn't know how to improve. And building, unfortunately, is right now an industry that you learn on your own, that there's not really training. Jackson and he's getting the training right now, but one of the things that's made a huge difference in my career is going to North Bennett Street and having that background. This guy didn't. Yeah. And so I always felt bad for him that there wasn't a next step for him to go. As a counselor in your thing, right? Yeah. This kind of, hey, you're good at this, you're good at this. Is that what's going to come back from that test with you guys, and how does that work?
Absolutely. So the assessment yields career matches that link to the ONET website, which is through the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So you've got like the most up-to-date current information about jobs in the United States. So it does match to that. We encourage, though, people to hold that kind of lightly and look at broader job categories or clusters, or look for the common threads. And also, don't put your job on the witness stand and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, so sometimes I'll talk to someone who's just really unhappy in their job and they're about ready to quit. We give them an assessment, and actually they're a great fit for that type of work. Now, maybe they don't like their boss. Maybe they don't like the context.
Maybe the skills aren't being utilized.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so this, I think, is permission to raise your hand and say, I want to do more of the creative graphic design on our next project. Or, hey, can I sit in on the next brainstorming meeting? Or, hey, can I stay out of the next brainstorming meeting? And so to speak up for yourself and have this vocabulary to say, this is what I thrive in, this is what I don't thrive in. And also, like, I understand these are the things that are going to exhaust me and fatigue me. That's okay. I have language around that, and it makes me feel better about it. Right. So I think there are some big, I think, determining factors for what kind of categories you're going to like, categories of work. The one that is huge is spatial reasoning. So spatial visualization, typically it's very helpful if you're going to be doing construction, if you're going to be doing design, engineering, and a lot of the sciences. You have to be able to sort of understand and think spatially and three-dimensionally. Yeah. If you think on the opposite end of the continuum, which is an abstract thinker, those people do great in business, especially like human resources, marketing, and they're going to do really well in things like counseling and law. So there's no deficit. It's only, this is your asset. Where are you going to apply it? And if you're in the wrong context, it's going to feel like a deficit,
Are you familiar with the book, The E-Myth, the Entrepreneurial Myth?
Oh, yes.
Martin Gerber,
yes.
Michael Gerber, or whatever his name is. He talks about entrepreneurship for people who want to start their business. And he described, have you read that?
Yes.
He describes the technical person. And I think he describes it as a pie shop, that this person's really good at making pies. But
yeah.
And then they start to have to go to the accounting.
Right.
And they start to hate owning a pie business. Yeah. When in reality, they shouldn't be doing the accounting.
Right.
They should be making the pies.
Exactly.
And hire out an accountant.
This is a real challenge for a lot of specialists. They love doing the work. They love being in the nitty gritty. And then they accelerate, they advance in their career, and they become managers. And then all of a sudden, they're not doing the specialized work anymore. They're they're managing a team of specialists. It's like going from being the first chair violinist to the, conductor.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that can be a tough transition, but possible and totally doable. And I think if you can find ways to reconnect with the pies, then that's great. I would say there are other people who are maybe working, they're working in a pie shop and they're like, man, I've got this numerical aptitude and I just don't feel like I'm using it as much as I'd like to. Instead of quitting and going and working for a huge accounting firm, maybe you start doing the bookkeeping
Just
and the
ask the
accounting
boss.
for your, yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
So I've heard you say the term specialist
Yeah.
a couple of times. I love the terms and vocab behind the book.
Right.
Are there more? Like,
Yes.
what else? Can you walk me
frame
through
it
some
out.
of those?
Absolutely,
what is it?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I talked about idea generation,
Yeah.
talked about spatial reasoning. That's a
Yeah.
big one. Your work approach. So are you more of a generalist or more of a specialist? Another one that I love to talk about is the aptitude for inductive reasoning. So it's the exercise.
How many
is called,
aptitudes are there?
so almost like 52, but for this book we test about 14, and for
14.
the assessment that comes with the book,
Awesome.
test about 14.
Okay.
There's also an interest survey, by the way, and that's a separate piece. But yeah, so the inductive reasoning one is really interesting. It tells you how comfortable you are making decisions under pressure with limited facts. And so when psychometricians were developing this exercise, they realized that a lot of physicians have this thing, and it's this comfort with being able to connect the dots, arrive at a conclusion when you only have a few symptoms that are coming to you, or a few clues or a few hints. And there are some people who love to work like that and some people who hate it. There are some people who come to me after that exercise and they're like, there were just too many right answers and I couldn't decide and it was so stressful and I ran out of time. And that tells us something really important. If you feel that way, you're probably a fact checker, which means that you really are meticulous. You want to gather all the information, all the facts before you make a decision about something. Those are the people who say, I need to sleep on it before I get back to you.
Right.
Diagnostic problem solvers, though, these are people who love a little bit of chaos. They feel really comfortable making connections under pressure. They can take a few bits of information and kind of get the gist of it. Interestingly, it doesn't always require time pressure. Anthropologists, archaeologists get a score as a diagnostic problem solver as well, because you're working with a lot of unknowns. So whenever you have to fill in gaps, fill in missing information, can't talk to the people you're studying from 1,000 years ago, you've got to do some guesswork and you have to be comfortable doing that.
Right.
So that's an interesting aptitude as well. So we kind of talk about the core four. So of all the aptitudes that we could test, the core four that we really look at: sequential reasoning, idea generation, spatial reasoning, and then that diagnostic problem solving.
What is sequential reasoning?
Okay, so that one is how comfortable you are organizing a lot of information on the fly in your head.
Okay.
So a lot of people,
Sorry to do this. Is this a big Venn diagram? Is it they're all overlapping? Is that the way this works?
You want to see this visually. Yeah.
I need to see this visually. I'm sorry. I'm hearing words, but I can't see it.
I'm cracking.
I know.
This is great.
I know. This is great. So,
All right, visual guy. All right, let's slow down.
when you take the assessment, you get your results. There's a lot of color. There's this great diagram that shows you how, kind of how you score. And it shows all of these things. And then we talk about powerful pairs. For example, these aren't all in isolation. So spatial reasoning and numerical reasoning, when you've got those two things, engineering is an incredible fit when you've got that pairing. If you're inductive and sequential, you'll be great at working for a political campaign and there's a political scandal. You'll fix it, solve the problem, and then map out a new course going forward. So that's a powerful pair. So yeah, getting back to sequential reasoning is that ability to organize a lot of complex information quickly in your head. Yeah. So some people are very organized, but they have to write everything down and see it. Other people, they've just got it. The people who are sequential, they'll often say that in school, they hated having to show their work. I just figured it out. Why do I have to show my work?
Is she describing you right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I got in trouble. I took a test one time. I got 100 and I didn't show any work. And the teacher was like, I think you cheated on this, but I just don't, I know you didn't, but I don't have any proof to show that you didn't cheat.
Right.
So you need to show your work. I was like,
Yeah, that's sequential. So it was actually an aptitude that was seen as a negative in that particular instance. Yeah.
Okay, so back up. I still don't see it, but go ahead with your explanation.
So just to be clear, how you got this data, when you were talking about the job census data, you have interviewed some people from each of those jobs. Is that kind of what you meant by that, and how you got that?
So I don't work for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but there are way smarter people than me accumulating all this data. But yeah, basically, when you see your results, you can map how you scored over how a typical engineer scored,
lawyer,
and that's how you can see that with a pretty good degree of accuracy, this is a match or it isn't.
I see.
And in some cases, certain aptitudes are a great match and others are not. And that's where you start to have to say what's more important to me to exercise.
Yeah.
Can do you look at people and in your career of helping people that you just look at them and go, dude, you're in the wrong place? And it's that easy?
Sometimes, sometimes sometimes, but we all make career decisions for a variety of reasons. Like, this is where I live. I need to take care of my aging parents. I need to move for my spouse, right? Like, there are so many factors. So I would never go to a lawyer who like scores spatial and say you need to quit your job and go work for Brent Hull. Like, but I would say you should probably start doing something more tactile on the side. You should probably get involved in gardening and building things and build yourself a shop in your garage, because you need to exercise that somehow. And I think we can't also rely on our jobs to like just give us total satisfaction. I think we're looking to our jobs to do that. More and more of us are looking to our work for meaning, and I get it, but that's a lot of pressure on a...
What about with younger kids? Like you said, you 15 to 25. Can you steer them better with this information?
Yeah, so I've given this to a lot of young people, mostly under 20. And what I can say is, if I give this to a 15-year-old, it sometimes lands and sometimes it goes a bit over their heads. They come back, though, after their first year of college, and it really sticks. So just a few years, this information takes on a whole new meaning. I think you've got to put yourself out there into the world a little bit. I think you need a little bit of exposure. It's a combination of like know thyself and also just like get out there and get some exposure. That's huge. I wish schools did that more, like gave students more of this exposure to work, like let people come shadow this here at this place. I mean, what an amazing opportunity. Because we don't have a talent gap in this country. It's 100% an exposure gap. We just...
Explain that. I think I know what you mean.
So the talent is there. So for example, when I talked about the gender bias, like there are a lot of women avoiding certain kinds of careers because they're self-assessing themselves out of those careers. We often go into work that we're familiar with. We often study things that we had some exposure to in high school. So I can like count those subjects on one hand, Yeah. And so we're just not being introduced to enough things. But the raw talent is there.
There's a sports similarity to this. I think it's said often about LeBron James. If he was born in a South American country, he would be one of the best keepers of all time.
That's a great example.
But just because of the exposure to basketball here, of course, he went and started and become one of the greatest basketball players of all time.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. And I sometimes reflect on that, like how many, kids are not being exposed to industries they could be hugely successful
We're missing Albert Einstein in whatever field.
I know. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is like right up my alley. This is exactly what I used to do with my old job before going to school for this. Well, I guess I say this is exactly what I did. I managed a team of people, and I loved getting into the nitty gritty of, you work really well in this area. How can we fit you into this area and do that? And so I took a lot of these tests, and I made my team take a lot of these tests. Are there any things that you were inspired from, that you and Betsy were inspired from as you started piecing this all together?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, there were as I told you, we interviewed so many people for this book, and we were so inspired by their stories. One of the most fun interviews for me, besides you, Brent, was an old friend from elementary school. I hadn't talked to her in years, but I'd kind of seen that she'd gotten really involved in motorsports. And as kids, I remember she used to say she wanted to be an engineer for NASA. And I was like, God, I wonder what Heather's doing. And so I talked to her, and she became a mechanic. She actually became the first female mechanic on the Subaru racing team.
Nice.
And so she was just living the dream and traveling all over the world, working on cars. And she talked about sort of it was actually really neat to see what aptitudes you need to be able to change a tire, and whatever, how fast you need to do it.
Right.
And so that was a really fun one because it just pushed me. I went into a rabbit hole, was watching all these racing videos and stuff, which was it was so fun to learn about a field that I knew nothing about and an industry I knew nothing about. So that was really cool. We talked to Carla Hall, who's, celebrity chef, and she actually started out in accounting.
No way.
And that surprised me. And she said, yep, I didn't like it. We talked about why, and it made total sense. She's like a big idea person. Man, she does not slow down. She's always like coming up with a new venture, big idea person. So those were fun. And then, I interviewed my mom,
cool.
who always wanted to own a restaurant. And at 60, she finally started her own restaurant and sort of had, gave her the assessment. I think she was maybe 65 when I gave her the assessment, and chef was like her number one career match.
Oh, you're kidding.
So that was super cool.
Oh, that's really neat.
So there were some fun, really uplifting stories for sure.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So I keep pulling this back to the trades and education really, because, one of our premises on this show is that college is not for everybody.
Absolutely.
And I think, Brent thinks that the college system's broken a little bit right now as far as the money you pay and
Bang
everything
for your
else.
buck.
Yeah.
And so we talk about the trades being such a great place. And I think I told you that for some reason, when I graduated college, I was just like, the last thing I'm going to do is put a suit on. I just, that idea of working for someone like that just made my skin crawl. And I don't know whether I just perceived it at the time as just like, I can't go there, or whether the artistic guy with me was just like, The question is, are you seeing this test helping people that aren't college educated? Are you seeing this thing for people who just want to go into the trades, right? And do you have any comments about, the validity or power of college or not, stuff like that?
Oh, so many. How much time do we have? So many comments. No, absolutely. I am so inspired by the conversations you guys are having here, because they need to happen and people need to hear them, because young people don't realize there are alternatives.
Right.
And they're really good at being sheep, and they're just going through the motions and not
Right.
stopping to ask why. A good example, so let's take that spatial reasoning aptitude. With that aptitude, you could potentially be a great engineer. You could be a neuroscience. You could be a great, you could go into construction. You could be an electrician. There are a lot of careers with a lot of different education levels and certification levels that demand that aptitude equally. And so then you have to bring in these other factors, like what kind of work environment do you want to work in? Do you want to wear a suit? Like the work context piece is hugely important. And we don't talk about it too much in this book, but if you look at that ONET website that the U.S. government manages, there's a work context category, and it'll tell you the percentage of your day you're going to be in front of a computer, the percentage of your day you're going to have to be on the phone.
Wow.
Those are conversations that are not happening in school. I can tell you.
Yeah.
I work in this industry, and those are not happening. And so
Yeah,
I
that's
think we need to
interesting.
be very honest with young people about those work context questions, because that's what will really wear at you. And you'll wake up at 45 and wonder, like, why am I so exhausted? And so the aptitudes are important, but I think work context is also important. I think there's like kind of the concentric circles are like your interests, your aptitudes, and also the opportunities that exist today. And those are constantly changing. And technology is changing the face of those too.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think to answer your question, I think we're just not being honest, and we're not introducing young people to enough things. We're not exposing them to enough things. My master's research was in Switzerland, which is the gold standard for vocational education. So that was my research focus.
I was going to ask you, internationally, how do we stack up?
Oh, yeah. No, we're not
well.
doing great.
Not well at all.
Not doing well. Switzerland was sort of the model that I looked at, and they have something called the Sneak Peek Week. And
What's
it
it
is
called?
Sneak
Sneak
Peek
Peek.
Week.
Sneak Peek, okay.
Schnippelehre in Swiss German.
What'd you call me? What'd she call me?
What did you just say to me? That
Bless you.
was an assault.
Yeah.
Assault. Yeah.
Swedish insult.
Yeah. Exactly.
Swiss insult.
So anyway, the whole point of this week is when you're like high school age, you get to go, like someone would come spend a week with you, Brent, here, and see what you do. And then they might say, that's great. And they maybe have them go shadow someone in a similar industry. And you do this as long as it takes to land on something that lights you up. I think that exposure, in addition to taking an objective assessment, I think you need both of those things. And then, yeah, I think we could maybe start moving the needle. But the conversations are happening. I mean, definitely people are talking about, the resurgence of the trades. My whole thing is I just want people to have options. I want you to stay nimble, because the world is just changing too fast. I think as long as you've got
Give me an example of that.
options and choices. Well, actually, we talk about someone in the book who went into the world of design back when it was X-Acto knives and glue sticks, coming up with like designs for marketing and advertising firms and things. Now graphic design looks totally different, right? It's completely sitting at a computer screen.
Sure.
So that's an example of the job leaving you in a way, and the job changing so much to where it's unrecognizable, or a doctor who now is doing telemedicine. That's another example. So I think things are changing so fast that you may have gone into exactly the right career for you, but the face of it has just changed so much,
Yeah.
and
That's
you now need to change course. And so I just want to make sure young people today have that pivotability, I guess, like that they can change their minds later on. You're not stuck.
So back to Switzerland and other countries and how they do it. I know one of the Nordic countries, they don't do assessments. They don't do grades until like age 12 or 13 or something. Do you see that as playing any factor into driving people away? Like, for example, girls thinking, oh, I'm not as good at math stuff, I'm going to run away from this because they had a bad test or something.
Jackson, are you listening in on my conversations at home? Because I have an 11-year-old, so fifth grader. And my husband and I were just talking about this, and we were just like, what do grades actually do for you in fifth grade? Like, what is, I mean, I just want to know, what lights you up? Do more of that.
Right.
Get through the other stuff, but do more of what lights you up.
Yeah.
So I tend to agree. I don't think those are incredibly helpful. But I think also introducing young people to more of the trades at a younger age, like bringing those into the classroom, letting students get their hands dirty and try new things. A lot of young people have no idea that they have the aptitude for spatial reasoning just because there's not an opportunity to really exercise it in school. We interview.
How would spatial reasoning be exercised in a school?
So this is a good example. Like? So we interviewed a girl who was 18 at the time of the interview who really struggled in school, had dyslexia, was just constantly used to assessments telling her she's falling short, that she's got a deficit. Finally, an English teacher recognized that she learns and thinks more spatially. So instead of in English class writing a 5-paragraph essay the way we were all taught, she created a very visual diagram to help her sort of chunk and block out her ideas in this very sort of like, spatial, almost like a collage format. So there are techniques that we can use to help students exercise certain aptitudes, and of course, this sciences tend to really be a great fit for those students, but not always how they're taught in school. And so I think that's, things allowing students to build and to tinker and to put the IKEA desk together. Yeah. Those are great ways to tap into that. Yeah. But if you know these things about you, then you sort of have this through line throughout your life, right? So if I know my aptitudes and you know your aptitudes, then in 20 years, if the industry changes so much that I don't even like my job anymore, I can go back to my aptitudes and say, okay, this is what's true about me. This is my compass. Let me start from there, rather than just reacting in a very chaotic sort of way.
Well, and it can feel so paralyzing if, you start to read stories in the news of whatever your job industry is, like trucking right now, for example, like they're coming into self-driving cars.
Right.
You start hearing about that, you're like, that'll never happen to me. And then it does.
Right.
All of a sudden you're scrambling. And typically in those scrambles, you're not picking like, what did I like about trucking? Right. I like the,
that's
seeing new places, driving, the monotony of it, whatever it might be.
Take those essential pieces and try to find that in other industries.
You're now just going, what can I do? I've got to figure. Right. So that's so helpful. That's going to be so helpful to have as a resource. Now I'm curious, I don't want to bring up other assessments to, that are rivals, Myers-Briggs, I know, right?
Yeah. Oh no, I love all of it.
But with some of those other ones, are you seeing similarities like within, like Myers-Briggs is super well known.
Yeah.
So like ENFPs, they're more typically this. Is
that what you are?
Any crossovers? I'm ENFP or ESFP. I'm one of the two.
Okay. I love all that stuff.
Okay. They're talking acronyms.
We're talking
I have no
acronyms.
idea what they're talking about.
We've just gone
to
a
Google Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, just Google it. No, I'm a huge fan of all of it. Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, love that stuff. We talk about.
Do they cross over?
They're like, think of it like layers.
Yeah.
So personality is different than aptitudes.
Okay.
So that's super important to know. And that's different than interests. So a self-reported interest survey, that's just like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 5, how interested are you in building cabinets? On a scale of 1 to 5, how much would you like to come up with a cure for a disease? That's totally self-reported. Yeah. If I watched Grey's Anatomy last night, I'm going to respond differently than if I watched CSI last night, right? That's actually, we talk about that research in the book. It's fascinating.
That's crazy.
We can really be swayed. Aptitudes can be objectively assessed through a series of timed exercises. And then personality measures are also really helpful, and they tell you how you interact with people, how you're going to work with people on a team or in your family, but they're not aptitudes. So it's just different, not better or worse. There's no ranking of these things. It's just, I think you need to know all of these things about yourself.
That actually really helps me understand. We had one at my last job. We had an assessment that we did called the 5 Voices, and it's like it's a team dynamic one. Have you heard?
Cool. I think I've heard of that one. Yeah. Well, was it helpful?
It was very helpful.
Yeah.
It was one of the best, tests that I've taken up until this point, just because it spoke to me really well and it helped me understand my teammates in a way that I didn't understand before. But we were hiring a girl to replace one of our employees. We were like, all right, our previous employee had these attributes about her that we really liked. And you similarly should match up in this way. But the score on the 5 voices assessment, which I'm realizing now is a personality assessment, not a aptitude assessment, was wildly different. And we were like, we thought they like have similar interests in these things, or they both get life from doing the accounting behind the scenes and other things like that. It was closely linked to aptitude in some ways. So that's really helpful, because I've always been trying to rectify, why in the world do they love doing the exact same things in this job, but they're wired differently in different ways. And so
completely. I mean, you never want to use an aptitude assessment to like keep people out, but it's super helpful in placing your team into the right kinds of roles,
right,
or recognizing the kinds of projects that would energize them. So I recently hired someone who is definitely an idea person, and you all learned that I am not necessarily that rapid idea rate person. She is, and she's also fairly spatial. So she likes to have some degree of this like tactile work. So the work is very administrative, but when I can tell she's getting a little fatigued, I'll be like, hey, do you want to go design our next Canva flyer?
Yeah.
Like you can, as an employer, you can recognize this in your team and keep them all a little more energized and keep everyone afloat.
Yeah.
That's smart.
You know, but really we're hoping that this helps people get in the driver's seat of their own careers and have more agency and advocate for themselves as they're navigating their careers.
Yeah.
I know you want to ask like 50 questions. Just
so
hang on.
This is awesome.
The AI, is that just a big disruptor?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Never heard of it.
Here you are using these acronyms, Brent. What is this all about?
Cute. That's cute. Is that an example of a disruptor, like the doctor who's now telemedicine?
Yeah.
Is that just what that AI is going to be?
Yeah, actually, AI wrote this book.
Or do you see
No,
it?
it is. It's terrifying. Yeah, right. It took 5 years.
Had to wait till the technology caught up. Yeah.
We had to train it. No, it is. It's changing a lot of things. I was actually just talking to one of the tutors that we work with for our high school program, and he was like, Alex, like none of your students can write. But they're all ultimately coming up with good essays because we have these amazing editing tools. I'm not necessarily against that. You know, one of the aptitudes we look at is called visual comparison speed. It's how quickly you can spot anomalies or differences in a text. Also, actually, it's really used or it's needed for pilots. And if you're captaining a ship, you have to be able to have a really quick radar, visual radar. You know, if you don't have that, though, thank goodness we've got things like, you know, spell check, right? So I think the tools are great. I just think, like everyone else is saying this, I think AI has just been like thrown on us so fast that we haven't developed like the methodologies and the rules and like the moral compass to like sort of navigate that thoughtfully. I think a lot of people are having that conversation,
you don't see it necessarily as being changing category of this book, right? Or
we did touch. You know, it's interesting. We touched on it a little bit when I think we were talking about the idea generation aptitude, because some people like me who come up with one idea and they want to start working on it right away, which can be a little bit rash. You know, you want to maybe consider alternate ideas. You know, AI can help with that. If you struggle with detail orientation, AI can help with that. So I think it's replacing jobs. Everyone's talking about that. It doesn't change the way you would score, you know, and your aptitudes are your aptitudes. I think that if you know what they are and you've got that compass I talked about, you can navigate all these things that life's throwing at you, whether it's AI or outsourcing or, you know, your partner needs to move to another state for a job, you know, and I think you just start from that piece of what's true about you. And I think you can pretty much ride any wave. I mean, maybe that's optimistic, but I think it's possible.
Do you think that, do you feel like the trades are insulated from that because they're so tactile or so hands-on? They're not, you know.
I think you probably could answer that better than me, but I see what you're doing as being so clever because you're so entrepreneurial. So you're like, we're going to do a show. We're going to do education programs. You know, we're doing like high-end historic preservation. We're gonna honor the way things were done 100 years ago. And I think people need to find a niche, and they need to find that some degree of expertise and own it, and get super creative with how they share it, and be just evangelists for whatever they love to do. You know, and you obviously have a huge following, and people want to hear about what you're doing. And I think everyone has to think entrepreneurially now.
That's interesting.
There was a teacher that was talking about, I think they were being interviewed, like, are you just changing the way that you teach now that you've got all this AI stuff, that your students aren't writing their own essays and all this other stuff.
Yeah, that's
And I think he responded, no, I'm not scared at all. I'm not bothered by it. I mean, when they leave school, they are going to have AI to write their emails and to do, whatever they use it for. So what I did is I just stopped saying, write your own thing, but I started saying, use AI, and then you edit it to make it not look like it was written by a computer, kind of pass the Turing test, if you will. But I don't know. I thought that was a very interesting way of looking at it, because I think a lot of teachers responded in like fear of, oh crap.
Right.
This is like completely changing. All these students are going to cheat and all this.
Yeah.
And then some teachers responded, and I think that guy responded really well, because it was almost like he was saying, well, I know they're going to use this to cheat. I'm just going to make a different assignment.
Absolutely.
And so it's now not changing the paradigm in a little bit.
Right.
Feels like we can do the same thing with jobs that come around with AI and with all that and stuff, because reality is it's going to be used. The reality is it's been used in coding for the past 2 years, and it's going to continue to be used in a lot of stuff. So how do we take that, and maybe even the identification and what was different that the pilots and that they needed
having a quick eye.
The quick eye to understand
exactly.
that. But it, having that, even just an understanding, this was written by a human, I don't know. There's opportunities everywhere.
I think I think you could look at it as very scary, but you could look at it as an opportunity to do more of the work that's human work, creative human work.
Right.
I mean, I would love to not have to do all the menial labor involved in like writing emails and checking emails.
Right.
Like any tool that can help me do that is great.
Right.
So that I can spend more time having good conversations and, creating, work that's important to me, or, doing my craft. Like, I think if we can do more of the stuff that makes us uniquely human, I think that's a win.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Like that.
So.
Okay. What is like your favorite part about this book? What's going to excite you about this? Just tell us why you're so excited about this.
Okay. I'm excited just in general for people to just hold this in their hands finally, because it's been so long. I've been talking about it for so long. But I'm excited for people to finally be able to, the assessment's been around for a long time, but to now add such a rich like layer of context, I guess, to that, so that you just aren't just looking at your results. Now you can read stories from dozens of people who've taken the exact same assessment, and they're going to talk about how they've applied it in their careers. Yeah. And our hope, and I think this is what's going to happen, is you're going to see yourself. You'll see yourself in Brent's story. You'll see yourself in my mom's story. You'll see yourself in Carla Hall's story. And I think that makes us feel less alone, less crazy, especially if we're making a big career decision, and it's scary, and it can feel very isolating, and you can feel very alone. And I think this will give some people that assurance that like we're all doing it, So I'm excited about that.
How did you organize the stories in this book? Like, how did you decide that he would even be a good candidate for this?
We started. It was the brainstorming involved in this was fatiguing. It was a lot. We went back and forth. Do we take
is brainstorming as ideas your niche, or is that not?
No, okay, I'm all about like the first idea. I'm going to go with the first thing I think of, because it's exhausting. So Betsy and I went back and forth a lot. But we first looked at like events that we thought elicited certain aptitudes. Like I remember it was around Thanksgiving, and I was like, what do you need to be able to put on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade? So we talked to some people who work for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Cool.
And so we started by doing that. And then we started looking at, jobs that were just interesting. And for me, those were jobs I didn't know a lot about.
Yeah.
And people
what is preservation carpentry?
Yeah, I had no idea, right? And that was so fun. I mean, I learned so much from these interviews, and that was the best part of it. And so, careers that maybe people didn't know about, that I didn't know a lot about, people that Betsy and I knew, and we had a relationship with them, and we thought they've got a good story, and I think they've got something to say. And of course, we were really interested in talking to people who'd made really big career moves, big career pivots. We talked to Simone Yetch, who's a YouTuber. She's famous for taking a Tesla and hacking into it and making a truck out of it before the actual Cybertruck. She made a Tesla truck.
Wow.
And it went viral on YouTube.
Cool.
She's from Sweden and had like a very conventional government job before she went off on her own to become this, crazy inventor and YouTuber. So those kind of grand career pivots were really attractive to us.
What do you hope the book does?
I mean, I think, like I said, I hope it gives some people some comfort, especially if they're in the middle of a big career change. I hope it speaks also to those career starters. So, coming out of high school, thinking about college, maybe wondering, do I have to go to college? Or coming out of college and wondering, gosh, what did I just do? And where am I going now? And then, on the other end of it too, people who are, in their 60s and 70s who are looking for an avocation, who are looking to maybe reinvent themselves post-career. So I think there's different stages, and this I think will sit with different people differently. But I hope it will help give some people some encouragement to maybe make a big career change if they've been wanting to, but also to reconsider the career they're currently in and to not jump ship too quickly. There might be just small tweaks that they could make to really transform the experience for themselves.
This is something I wish I had, I think, coming out of high school, probably, to just go, And I took Johnson O'Connor, and it gave good insights, but I think I wish I had a little more context to why.
Yeah, what this looks like in people's lives. Yeah, I mean, the ultimate goal here is career wellness. Like we're focused on wellness in every other aspect of our lives, but I think we need to think about wellness in our careers too, because we're living longer on the whole, and we're gonna have a lot of jobs. More jobs now than we did 50 years ago. 7, 8, 9 different careers maybe in our lives.
Do you think that your career is going to change because of this? I mean, I can see people wanting to talk to someone, not just take the test.
Yeah. I mean, the conversations are the most fun, right? The one-on-one conversations, those bring me a ton of joy. There's only one of me, which is partly why I wanted to write a book too, was to share all of these things that had been bubbling up and I'd been thinking about throughout my career. But yeah, sitting down and talking to people is my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
The one-on-one is the best.
Maybe you'll get a lot more consulting after a lot of people ringing up
Happy
your phone.
to do it.
What do you think about the 40-hour work week?
Oh, is it only supposed to be 40 hours?
Well, yeah. No. I guess there's talks in London, in England,
right,
where they're looking at modifying it, or people have tried to do different. I know in the Nordic countries,
in France they tried to make it 30.
Yeah,
in the Nordic countries they don't work as many hours.
Yeah, no, I have always felt like it's till the job is done. I mean, I know not every industry works like that. Like if you need to just be on call and you're in a triage sort of position, I don't know how to work around that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I work with young people, so I get texts like, at 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
What do I do about this?
Yeah, the same thing.
And I'm okay with that. Like I like having a career that feels like integral, where it doesn't feel so siloed. It's tiring sometimes, don't get me wrong, and we all need breaks, but I never wanted a career where it was like, go to the office, close the door, and then 9 hours later or whatever,
walk out,
it all starts, walk out and go home, and the book is closed. So I definitely, when you have your own business, the book is always open.
Definitely.
It's like, there's no closed book. So
that makes sense.
I don't know if I answered your question,
no,
but I feel like
answer.
it's however long it takes.
Yeah. I think that's a great answer. Yeah. I think there's both sides of the coin. I think there are some operations that work 40 hours a week when they don't need to. And a lot of people are sitting at a desk, twiddling their thumbs to slowly chip away at a project that could be done in 10 hours where they could be paid the same salary.
Yeah.
For getting anyway.
And
then the other way where they have to be on call for longer. Doctors, great example.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, I every job I had before I started my own practice, I was bored. I was because I work really fast. I am an executor and I just like to get things done quickly.
Right.
And so I was always twiddling my thumbs, so I never understood that idea. But I think some employers, though, feel like, well, go find new work to do then, to fill up the rest of the day. Yeah. I mean, my team, we're all remote, so I don't micromanage. I don't ask people to keep hours. I just want the work to get done, and I want our clients to be happy. That's sort of my perspective.
That's how I did it as well. Just but I also hate the monotony of like checking someone's hours and being like,
worst. Yeah.
Great job today.
Yeah, it's the worst.
So that makes sense. My next question: I had a kid who came to me recently and said, "Hey, I think college is not for me."
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone in that position? Like, just to like, how about you critique what I gave him?
Yeah.
All right. So I said to him, "Hey, understand who's paying for your college. Like, what do your parents think about this? Because if you've got to, if your parents want you to go to college and they're paying for it, you're probably going to college. But if they're not, you got to work out, would they be okay with you going and trying some things so that you can get a feel for what's out there? I just think the same thing for anyone who's wanting to go into the trades, because I recommended that to him. Try out a trade, try out something that you would be hands-on, tactile. And Anyway, and then he went on and I said, just go see if you can work for someone for free for a while. See if your parents will take the money that they would have spent on college to spend it on you working for free for someone.
Yeah.
And then try that out, work as hard as you can, and see if they'll hire you out of that. Yeah. And that's the route that he's taking right now. And I think that is getting a trade, like an apprenticeship is basically what I just described to him.
Yes.
Was go apprentice with someone.
And use the money to
live. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, while you're learning this. And you guys talked about that on one of your shows,
right?
It's sort of this old concept of going and living and shadowing someone and following and learning. And what an amazing way to get an education.
Yeah.
You know, I think you gave him really good advice.
Okay.
I think that was great advice. I am a little bit of a romantic. I love the idea of college. I love the idea that there's this space where you can bump up against new ideas and new perspectives and things that are uncomfortable and kind of consider and contemplate life in the world in a pretty insular environment.
Yeah.
And the problem is that that's become just an immense privilege because of the cost.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like it should be that exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So my perspective is like, get an education for as cheap as possible, because I think everyone should take a philosophy class. I think go just like revel in ideas a little bit, but do it very cheaply, and then go get these experiences like you're talking about. I've always thought it'd be so cool to have a model where you're in the classroom learning, abstract ideas and just having random conversations, but then also going out and getting this work experience simultaneously. Yeah. But I think skills-based learning is different than like getting a broad, like liberal education, right? So I think we've started to conflate the two. Skills-based learning has to constantly be upgrading because technology is changing so fast. And community colleges, actually, that's really that's the whole point of a community college. We've kind of missed that message, but the idea is like those are your off-ramps as you're going along your career. When I need to go upskill, I go to a junior college and I just take a class. I just get a certification. So I think if you're not going to go to a 4-year university, you do still have to get some credentials, some certifications, and some real mentorship. I think that's huge. And I wish we had a better like formal mentorship model in this country that was available to everybody. But sense. I think that's huge.
Wow, that's a great answer. Well, okay. I think we're at time.
Wow, that was so fun. What a fun chat.
Well, I'm curious, do you have any parting words about the book? Obviously go buy it, go take the assessment and utilize that.
Yeah.
So
how long does the assessment take?
So the assessment takes 90 minutes. So when you buy the book, you get a code to take the assessment for free. And so yourhiddengenius.com has all that information. And actually right now already on the website, we've got some incredible resources and tools that are just downloadable. So if you have a team and you want to do this with your team, or your church, you want to do this with your church, we have like discussion guides to walk you through it. So all that's available on the website.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, and wherever you buy books, you can get it now.
All right.
Well done.
Check it out.
So much.
Your Hidden Genius.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank
this
you,
was
Alex.
Great. What a fun conversation.